So the first question to our case study, government policies, is a comprehension multiple choice question based off an article we had to read regarding the demand for cigarettes. Question 1 is, in the article, Joanne is quoted as saying that the price would not stop her from smoking. For Joanne, cigarettes are A, necessity, B, a luxury, or C, an inferior good. So option 1, or A, is asking us whether the good, cigarettes, to Joanne is a necessity. A necessity is a type of normal good, which means that as income rises, the demand for a good rises. However, the increase for a necessity good is less than proportional to the rise in income. Therefore, the proportion of the expenditure on these goods falls as income rises. Now, because the demand for her good doesn't change despite the price rise, necessity looks like a likely candidate for our answer, considering her demand is inelastic, which is one of the key definitions of a necessity. Option B, on the other hand, is asking us to identify whether the cigarette to Joanne is referred to as a luxury good. The definition of a luxury good is that it is a good for which demand increases more than proportionally as income rises, and is a contrast to a necessity good, for which demand increases proportionally less than income. Luxury goods are often synonymous with superior goods. Now, if we compare necessities with luxury goods in more detail, we can identify that elasticity tends to be higher for luxuries. Through analyzing Joanne's quote, we can gather that her demand for the cigarettes is inelastic, and as a result, luxuries appears to be a less likely option for our answer. Our last and final option for our answer is inferior good. Now, an inferior good specifically states that as income rises, the demand for a particular good decreases. This is reflected in the graph above, where as income increases, there is a decrease in the demand, or a reduction in quantity. Because the question doesn't have any relevance to Joanne's income activity, it is hard to immediately choose inferior good. Because cigarettes are so addictive, the increase in income doesn't discourage individuals from purchasing the unhealthy good. More often than not, the unhealthier the good, the less an individual is likely to buy if their income rises because of their stronger purchasing power for healthier and better quality products. So overall, it is hard to choose C as our answer because an inferior good states that demand decreases, and in our question, demand remains constant. It does not decrease. This is partnered by the fact that there is no mention of her income inactivity. Therefore, our final answer is A, necessity. Through the process of elimination and applying definition and theory into the question, we came to a conclusive decision that the cigarettes for Joanne should be identified as a necessity. So here are our 4 options for question 2, A, B, C, and D. From the question, we can gather that the demand is reasonably inelastic. However, the inelasticity is very strong because it's not very strong because Yeltsin states that he would keep on smoking, but not that much more. Therefore, when we analyze these graphs, we need to be aware of which graphs depict elastic and inelastic demand and how much of it. Our first option is option A. Option A shows us the tax burden on consumers and no tax burden on sellers. We can tell that this option isn't a strong candidate for our answer because we know for a fact that there is a tax burden on sellers as well as consumers. Alongside this, the graph represents a completely inelastic demand curve, which isn't necessarily what Yeltsin was highlighting. Our second option is option B. B depicts an even tax burden on consumers and sellers. It also reflects a relatively elastic demand curve. As price goes up, the demand for the good drops. Although the tax burdens are more accurate than the previous option, the graph depicts elasticity rather than inelasticity, which isn't what we're looking for. Our third option is option C. Immediately, we can see that the red shaded area, the tax burden on sellers, is greater than that of the consumers. This discourages us from selecting C as an option because we know that the taxes burden on the consumer is higher than the sellers. On top of this graph depicts nearly complete elasticity, with a slight increase in price dropping demand significantly. The responsiveness of the consumer is extremely strong, which isn't what we're looking for. Our fourth and final option is option D. Option D appears to have a larger green area compared to the red area, depicting a greater tax burden on the consumers over the producers. Furthermore, the demand curve is reasonably inelastic, which is what Yalson reflects in his statement. As a result of this, option D appears to be very likely as the correct answer. Therefore, through our analysis and a process of elimination, we are able to identify that the correct answer in our opinion is option D, as it depicts an inelastic demand curve with a tax burden on the consumers higher than that of the producers.
For number 4, we disagree that governments should not use taxpayers' money on campaigns to deter smokers, as despite the private cost to the smoker being paid in the form of lung cancer, this does not take into account the social costs to non-smokers that occur as a result of the smoking population. These social costs can be in the form of environmental costs, in particular the littering of cigarette butts. It is in fact estimated that approximately 7 billion cigarette butts are littered each year in Australia. This represents how the private cost of lung cancer does not take into account or equal kind of the social cost to the adverse effect smoking has on the environment. Similarly, the negative impacts on health caused by smoking causes enormous strain on taxpayers. I.e., this means society is paying more for healthcare to allow for the increased cost of keeping smokers alive. So non-smokers are paying more to keep smokers alive, showing that the social cost doesn't kind of add up to the private cost. It doesn't take it into account. Also, the notion of secondhand smoke can mean that even non-smokers may experience health impacts that smokers do. Again, representing a social cost that is not taken into account by the private cost of just lung cancer to smokers. In summary, we disagree that government should spend money on deterring smoking, as the private cost, lung cancer, does not account for the social cost. Like social costs such as environmental, taxpayer costs, and health costs. And in this instance, lung cancer, it even makes the social cost worse.
Question 3 is, comment on the following statement. Holding all other factors constant, if smokers were more sensitive to the increase in tobacco excise, the dead weight loss would be smaller. A, true, B, false, C, it depends. For this question, my answer is C, false. Dead weight loss or welfare loss is the loss of total economic activity and the fall of a surplus due to an impact on the market. In this circumstance, the impacting factor is an increase of price due to the introduction of a higher tax rate of 12.5% implemented for each of the next 4 years. However, dead weight loss varies on elasticity of demand and supply. With a steeper demand curve of tobacco products, namely due to the fact they are fueled by addiction and considered necessities to many, dead weight loss on the market is minimal with an increase in price. As seen in figure 3.1, a steeper demand curve compared to a more elastic one holds less area where welfare loss is calculated, shown by the triangle circled in red. This is due to a majority of consumers in this market purchasing the product regardless to a price increase. As quoted in the article by Joanne, the price increase is not going to stop me. This is further exemplified in the fact of a minimal reduction of 12% of smokers from the 1990s in Australia, even after the same tax scheme was introduced in 2013 and numerous ad campaigns and packaging changes have been implemented by the government. Therefore, the assumption that if smokers were more sensitive to the price, the deadweight loss would be smaller is false. Question 3 is, comment on the following statement. Holding all other factors constant, if smokers were more sensitive to the increase in tobacco excise, the deadweight loss would be smaller. A, true, B, false, C, it depends. For this question, my answer is C, false. Deadweight loss or welfare loss is the loss of total economic activity and the fall of a surplus due to an impact on the market. In this circumstance, the impacting factor is an increase of price due to the introduction of a higher tax rate of 12.5% implemented for each of the next 4 years. However, deadweight loss varies on elasticity of demand and supply. With the steeper demand curve of tobacco products, namely due to the fact they are fueled by addiction and considered necessities to many, deadweight loss on the market is minimal with an increase in price. As seen in Figure 3.1, a steeper demand curve compared to a more elastic one holds less area where welfare loss is calculated, shown by the triangle circled in red. This is due to a majority of consumers in this market purchasing the products regardless to a price increase. As quoted in the article by Joanne, the price increase is not going to stop me. This is further exemplified in the fact of a minimal reduction of 12% of smokers in the 1990s in Australia, even after the same tax scheme was introduced in 2013 and numerous ad campaigns and packaging changes have been implemented by the government. Therefore, the assumption that if smokers were more